It's good to have an opportunity to speak again with David Marsland. And David joins us to bring us up to date about the ACA Memorial Park in downtown Binghamton. Good morning.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so glad that we have a chance to chat. It's been quite a while since the last time we spoke.
Yes, that's correct. And it's a pleasure to speak with you and also with all of your great listeners.
Well, you worked with so many people in the aftermath of the terrible tragedy that happened at the American Civic Association in April 2009 to find an appropriate tribute and to develop with support from the community and a wide range of sponsors, the ACA Memorial Park. And it's really interesting to me that it doesn't feel like nearly a decade has gone by since the devastating incident that happened on Front Street at the American Civic Association. But it also, as I look back, it doesn't feel like it's even been 6 years since the work began on the Memorial Park. I'm looking back at, I think, the first story I did in October 2012 when city workers just began doing the preparation work at the corner of Front and Clinton Streets.
Yes, that's right. It took us about 3 years to do the fundraising, and once we had the funds secured, we were able to break ground and finally open the park in 2013, late that year. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that long, but time does move on, and of course I'm on to other projects now, but it's been a great project to work on, and I think I'm pleased to see that people in the community really have taken to it as a symbol of what we stand for in the community.
Most of our listeners, probably almost all of our listeners, know what happened on April 3rd, 2009, but there may be some people who weren't living here and didn't pay attention to the tragedy that occurred, but it was certainly, I would say, in modern memory, certainly in my lifetime, it was the worst thing that ever happened in the city of Binghamton, and sadly, so many people were touched directly, including yourself, by the senseless loss of life that happened that day.
Yeah, that's correct. We lost a lot of good people that day, and one of them was my wife at the time, Hong Chu Mao. And that directly led to my involvement in the project since, the families did reach out to each other, people who lost a loved one. We decided we wanted to do some kind of a project that would act as a fitting memorial and work together as a team, really, with a bunch of great volunteers and some great people like the architects over at BCK, ICI, among them Madeline Kotz, who was our lead architect, the city administration at the time, Mayor Ryan and his staff. We've also worked closely with the following administration to try to take good care of the park and the installation as it is. It's been a while, and I think there's probably very few people in Binghamton area who don't know someone who was affected or knows someone who was affected by that day.
The memorial, as it emerged when we were talking about it with the design and ultimately as it was constructed and then completed, to me, it seemed very, very appropriate. For those who have not been past the memorial, for those who haven't seen what ultimately was constructed on the southeast corner at the intersection of Front and Clinton Streets, describe the ACA Memorial Park.
Well, the park's set up on a corner lot, the intersection of Clinton and Front Streets on the north side. About I would say about 2 blocks south from the actual ACA building. It's roughly semicircular in design. The centerpiece is a marble column with a glass illuminated top. There's memorial stones with commemorative plaques placed around it in a circle, and an area with a walkway, 3 benches with access to the sidewalk, and then glass figurines of birds in various poses arranged in a regular fashion to kind of give the effect of a group of birds startled and flying away from a central location. And I think that's the part that is really unique about the structure. it's something, as we talked about yesterday, especially in the winter months. It's one of those things that really stands out because of the illumination.
And the design, especially the design and the crafting of those glass birds, was done with obviously it was such care and such love by a very talented artist.
Yeah, we went through a lot of iterations into design, and the overall design was based on different ideas from different family members of people who were killed in the tragedy, and brought together really in a masterful way by Madeline Kotz, who was our architect. And Marlon Townsend was the artist we selected to do the actual bird figurines and the glass casting of the central column. We had looked at the possibility of using metal figures as well. There's a lot of debate about possibilities of vandalism and what could happen to this monument when we built it. But we really came down on the side of trying to create something really outstanding and maybe even a little bit courageous, because we just didn't see how you could inspire people with just a metal figurine. The glowing aspect of the glass has always been a big factor, and I think what makes this a unique monument.
Well, it certainly has been, I think, an important way for the community to always remember what happened and those we lost in a situation that until it occurred, none of us thought could possibly happen in our hometown.
Yeah, and for me, the underlying message of the entire installation is that we have some pretty amazing people living in this area. And it's I guess the real tragedy is we don't really understand the resources and the great human potential we have around us until a tragedy like this takes a few of those folks away. I got to know the life stories of each and every one of the people who were memorializing, and without exception, these were people who'd come from different circumstances, had lived their dreams, some from very adverse circumstances. And we're very positive, uplifting people who were, would always try to overcome any obstacle. And, some of them from an ordinary perspective, some from an extraordinary perspective. But we've got people like this walking down the street right next to us every single day, and we don't really understand this. And I'm hoping that's what people who visit the memorial and read the plaques come away with is, people are truly amazing. That every one of us has this power inside of us to turn our lives into whatever we want it to be. And that's what we were, especially when you're confronted with adversity and tragedy and, even destruction. The human spirit always rises above those things, and it takes a little while to heal. But we always seem to manage to find a way to bring out the positive aspects in life. And that was really the underlying message of the memorial itself and the project that was involved with, because it gave so many people who were affected by it, directly or indirectly, a unified goal to work towards. It wasn't political and wasn't social and wasn't economic. It was just, let this never happen again, and this is not who we are. And look at how wonderful people are, because that's what happens in these tragedies. You kind of look at the senseless waste of life that goes on in these incidents, and you tend to become dispirited and lose hope, and that's exactly the kind of antidote we try to create in the memorial design.
And especially in the first hours and days and even weeks after a tragedy of this magnitude, I think it's so mind-numbing. I think, at least with respect to me in the aftermath and in the weeks afterwards, I still had difficulty believing that it really happened here, and it took a significant period of time for me, even though I wasn't there on that day. I did all of my reporting from here at the radio station, but it was just from the very beginning at about 10:30 on that morning. It's just a day I can never forget, and then when I think of how many people like yourself and so many other individuals and families and organizations that suffered direct losses of loved ones. And for me, it's incomprehensible what people have gone through since that morning in April 2009.
Yeah, horrible is a great word for it. It was pretty horrible, and I think one of the silver linings to that situation is when we started to gather together as family members. We were offered a lot of support from people in the community, but a phrase you commonly hear was, "I can't imagine what you're going through," and yeah, they couldn't. But amongst us who had lost someone and were in the heart of the whole thing, we sort of innately understood what each other was going through, and that was probably the biggest positive benefit, both for me and I think all of the other people involved in the project, was when we got together to talk about the memorial, we got to talk about what we were going through, and we understood each other really, really well. And that was sort of the inside nature of what the project was about, was it gave us a place to go where we weren't going to be out of context. And people look at you like you're horribly damaged or something like that. We knew we'd come back, but it was bad. Yeah, but at least we could look at each other and go, I know what you're going through. That was very important.
We're speaking with David Marsland, who has served as the project coordinator for the ACA Memorial Park here in Binghamton. And as we've mentioned recently, the 13 glass birds that have been on display so appropriately for the last several years, they have vanished, and that actually is what prompted me to contact you to find out what is going on.
Yeah, you got a little ahead of me, Bob, and your news sense is excellent. Although the only reason why I haven't been able to reach out to the community earlier is the situation's been a little dynamic. We had a report earlier in the fall of one of the wings missing from one of the birds, and went down with one of the other family members and the architect to investigate, and we did find that there had been a structural failure of one of the bird wings. We reached out to Marlon immediately to contact him, and he responded, of course. But his schedule as a glass artisan kind of takes him all over the country, and so he wasn't available to get together with us until basically early November, and by that time we'd found another structural failure. And we had foreseen this possibility. We have extreme weather conditions. There had always been some concerns about vandalism, of which there's been none, by the way. I have to mention that. I'm really impressed with the community that people have really taken good care of this monument. And this is really just, a natural occurrence, basically just wind and sun and the elements taking a toll on the original design. We had foreseen this. We had backup birds cast and in place. They're of a slightly different design, so they're not modular like the original ones were. But when we went on site, pretty much mid-November to swap them out, we decided we wanted to pull all 13 and do a structural inspection on them. And so we had the spares. We were going to remount them, but we basically had an on-site conference and decided, since we were all there, we had the city park team with the bucket truck and us there to be able to do this assembly. We pulled the birds with the idea that we would have them refurbished by the artisan and have them back in place, pretty much by about this point. But I only received word about 3 days ago that in working with the birds, they decided they want to take a longer time to come up with a solution to make sure these structural failures don't continue to occur. So we're now looking at, the late January, early February timeframe to get them reinstalled. And I personally find that really disappointing, because I had the distinct pleasure of flipping the switch on those babies at dusk about this time of year when we first had them installed. And there were people at the intersection in cars. And I flipped that switch, and you could hear this whoop from people in the cars who were so stunned at what just appeared. So to me, it's really kind of a holiday thing to have that illuminated, and I'm just more than a tad disappointed that we don't have them up and illuminated this time. And so you with your great news sense just got ahead of me in my press release just a little bit, but it's an excellent opportunity to get together with you, because one of the things I've wanted to do for a very long time, and basically just because I need to take a break from the fundraising development part of the project, haven't done until now, is to put together a trust fund for the park. It's something that could be used to manage the park in perpetuity past my lifespan. So we've recently got together with the Community Foundation. We're meeting with them on the 14th to formalize this. I now have a GoFundMe page out that will allow people to make donations to what we hope will be basically a long-term trust fund that will help us come up with money to assist the city in maintaining the park in perpetuity. So it gave me that opportunity to get together with you and talk about this a little bit.
Well, I need to actually point out, I didn't make the initial observation. My colleague Kathy White had noticed, because she frequently travels that route on her way in to work early in the morning, and she had brought it up to me at our holiday party, and she asked me if I knew anything of what had happened with the birds, and that's actually how I wound up contacting you yesterday.
Well, give Kathy my regards. It's one of the things that I take some pleasure in, is that people do. I go by that spot quite often and admire that installation. And I'm hoping that we will be able to work together to put some funding in place long term through this trust fund. And it just predates my intention to start the effort, because as you know, the 10th anniversary of this event is coming up in April, and I was still sort of in the late planning stages of putting this all together. But I think in a good way, your outreach has precipitated my moving forward with it, because this is basically the holidays, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to get into a promotional mode around working with people to put the park in a situation where we had long-term funding and support available. So I could share some of that information with you if you'd let me.
I certainly would like that. And your point about this season, in a season that usually is marked by joy and celebration, but the truth is, whether it's people like yourself who lost loved ones at the American Civic Association on April 3rd, 2009, or others who have lost people in so many different ways, whether it's recent or whether it's been decades. The holiday seasons are times when we do look back and yes, with some sadness, but also with joy and gladness to acknowledge the time that we had, even if the time was way too short with people who are no longer with us. So I think the holiday season is still an appropriate time to be talking about this. So, share with our listeners what they should know as this effort to make sure that this memorial park can be properly maintained moves forward.
Well, yeah, I for a long time I've had a sort of a quiet conversation with some people behind the scenes about putting together kind of a group of folks I refer to as the Friends of the Birds, just to give it some kind of a title. And, I'm going to be continuing to work and outreach to those. There'll be some private fundraising to put some things together. I already have some commitments. But the new feature is, something we didn't have years ago when we first started doing this fundraising, is the Gofundme site. So people can go to Gofundme.com. The link is help-preserve-the-birds. So it's basically help preserve the birds with dashes between the words. And they can make a donation there. People who would like to make a tax-deductible donation can contact the Community Foundation directly, although I'm meeting with them basically next week, so we don't have that fund in place. And we have to do a little paperwork around that. But for larger donations and people who would appreciate the tax deduction, there will be more information on acamemorial.com. That's our host website for the project. My contact information is there at acamemorial.com. And people can directly contact the Community Foundation in Binghamton. They're on the web, Community Foundation Southern Tier. And their phone number, if I have it correct here, is 607-772-6773. And the contact person there is Diane Brown. So if people would like to make a small donation for the holidays, we'd really appreciate it. I'll be interested to see how well GoFundMe works. I've heard some really good stories from people who've used this method to get community support. And we really think of this park as of the community. It was created completely volunteer funds. It was a partnership with the city, but no taxpayer dollars were used. The Parks Department does do an outstanding job of maintaining the grounds. And what we're trying to put into place is just kind of an endowment. It'll be invested in and the proceeds from that, the return on the investment will be used to do things like fund additional plantings. Like we'd like to put some more box junipers in place. We annually remulch and of course mow and trim the evergreens. There's a likelihood over time that we may have to do some minor repairs to either the pavement, the basing for the birds. And again, if we do end up running out of spare birds, we're working on a way to remanufacture or create a new bird type element to the memorial. I'd hate to have to take them down, and I don't see that happening anytime in the near future. We do have a group of people who are committed to working with this. As I said, Marlon Townsend's our artisan. Madeline Cott's our architect. She's now retired, but she continues to work on the project. I still act as the project coordinator. I communicate periodically with the other family members. And people can reach out directly to me via the website. I can give you another phone where people can use to contact me directly if they have ideas or want to get involved. And that's 607-821-0900.
Okay, why don't you give that number one more time in case people weren't prepared to copy that down?
Yeah, that's 607-821-0900.
Are there plans that are being developed for any special event in conjunction with the 10th anniversary of that tragedy? The 10th anniversary will be coming up on April 3rd next year, just a few months from now.
There's been a couple of offline conversations between me and a couple of family members who are still in the area, a number of whom have either moved away or relocated. Obviously the ACA will probably do something as well. I'd like to get together with all of those agencies, including the city, and see if we can do something that's appropriate. A little bit early, I think. I kind of want to let people get through their holidays because it is kind of a somber thing to talk about. Obviously, a milestone like this, needs to be marked. I think the one overwhelming thing that the people who actually physically lost a family member in this, they just don't want their friends and their family members and their mothers, daughters, wives, husbands, just don't want them to be forgotten. It's not so much the trauma of the event. It's just that these people led good lives. They're positive contributors to the community. Many of them were only there to take an English class, weren't even working with the ACA on any kind of immigration issues. We just want to make sure that people remember these folks and honor what they were doing with their lives. And that's really what the meaning of the memorial is about, is we have some amazing people in this community. We lost a few of them. Let's not forget them. And let's try to work together as a community to make sure this is a safe and pleasant community, a welcoming community for people. I've always thought of it as the parlor city. It's always been a melting pot community all through its history. And I still believe in the Triple Cities as a really excellent place to live and to raise your kids and to build a business. And enjoy the community. And, I think that's what it symbolizes for us. And again, I have to admit, I'm really impressed by, the thing we were most concerned about with the memorial was somebody taking a whack at it in some way, shape, or form. That hasn't happened. And that's really confirmed, the position I took when I was out working on the project with so many concerns about it. What we're dealing with now is really just wear and tear. And I'm very gratified to see that we live in a community where we can put something like this out there 24/7, unprotected, and people respect it. And I have to thank the community for that and also applaud this community because despite the challenges we're going through, I think in the long run the future looks bright, and that's really been our message all along, is no matter what happens, the future is a good place to be. Stay positive.
David Marsland, project coordinator for the ACA Memorial Park here in downtown Binghamton. Thank you so much for joining us. I wish you well during the holiday season.
Thank you, Bob, and to you and the staff of the radio station, and many thanks, and to everyone in the community. Happy holidays. Let's enjoy this year and give thanks for all the great things that are happening.